Hey everybody, it's your boy Edo the Rocket here, and today I want to share with you my gaming haul from the last few months. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. I know it has been a hot minute since I last posted a video, but today what I wanted to do was take you through some of my gaming pickups from the last 3 or 4 months. So without further ado, let's get started. The first game I wanted to show you guys, the first thing I wanted to show you guys is in fact a new console I picked up, which is the Nintendo Switch OLED. Now, this system released about 9-10 months ago, and when it was first announced, I don't know if I was actually that excited for it. I think I was hoping for a boost to the processor, a Nintendo Switch Pro, if you will. But honestly, once I actually had an opportunity to see one in person, I was blown away. The screen on the Nintendo Switch OLED, this thing is absolutely jaw-dropping. The Switch OLED, I think, really breathes a new lease of life into the Nintendo Switch platform. I'm finding I'm enjoying the screen so much as somebody that plays primarily undocked that I'm actually really wanting to go back and revisit a lot of games just to experience them with the new screen. I'm thinking particularly a lot of the Nintendo first-party stuff that has those bright, vivid colors like your Link's Awakening and Mario 3D World and Bowser's Fury. Those games look absolutely awesome on the system. Really happy with that pickup. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this is one of the few AAA games that actually managed to come out this year and didn't get delayed, and that is Horizon Forbidden West. I love the first game and in fact platinumed the original Horizon game. This one I'm going a little bit slower in terms of the pace, and I think a little bit of open world fatigue is setting in for me. The game has quite a long introductory sequence before it actually opens out to the Forbidden West, and once it did so, and I saw that there was about 20 side quests here and a skill tree that has actually branches out to be about 7 skill trees, I thought a little bit like, I don't know, I'm gonna come back to it. I did love the first game a lot, so I expect that when I do actually give the game time, I think it will eventually win me over, but at the moment, it just didn't grab me as much as what I hoped, I guess. The next game I want to show you guys is actually a set of 4 games. So I have picked up the complete set of Simpsons games for the PS2. So we got Simpsons Hit and Run, Simpsons Skateboarding, the Simpsons game, and Simpsons Road Rage. Now, when these games first came out, I actually overlooked them somewhat or steered clear of them. And the reason was, when I was a kid playing computer games and video games for the first time, most of the Simpsons licensed stuff was not very good. If you played Bart's Nightmare for the Super Nintendo, you know what I'm talking about. That game sucks. And to be honest, it wasn't a whole lot better on the PS1 either if you played like the Simpsons wrestling game, for example. But really, in retrospect, I think the Simpsons games really shone in the PS2. That was their golden era. And going back and playing these games now, I think all 4 of them are worth your time. Simpsons Skateboarding, which is obviously modeled on Tony Hawk, that is probably the weakest of the bunch, but still pretty fun to play. The rest of them, though, really, really fun. Simpsons Road Rage, that game is obviously modeled on Sega's Crazy Taxi, and that is a super duper fun game. Really cool to drive around an actual open world Springfield and sort of get a sense yourself of, like, you know, where is the Quickie Mart in relation to the nuclear power plant, in relation to the Simpsons house, that kind of thing. It actually, you know, replicates the gameplay formula pretty well as well. The Simpsons game, now that one is actually a pretty fun platforming game, or platform action-adventure game that has a lot of funny jokes and I guess self-aware references to the fact that the characters know that they are in a video game. And then lastly, I think the cream of the crop is Simpsons Hit and Run, which is based on Grand Theft Auto, and that game it just holds up so well. Again, the jokes are great, the gameplay is fantastic. I think it actually is a really serviceable Grand Theft Auto clone. And again, the writing really elevates it, and I think there's lots of stuff in there if you are a Simpsons fan to really enjoy. All of these games are very, very readily available as well, and for pretty cheap. So if you've half a mind to go back and visit the Simpsons game, I would highly recommend it. The next game I wanted to show you guys, another PS2 game. This one is The Thing. So this is, I think, somewhat of a underrated gem for the PS2. I know that licensed games, particularly ones on movies, can generally get a pretty bad reputation. The Thing, though, as far as survival horror games go, I think it's actually a pretty neat one. It does a really good job of taking the thematic elements of the movie, the John Carpenter movie, around paranoia and mistrust, and basically you play a character that returns to that Arctic base, and you have with you a squad of teammates, so you have like a medic and a soldier and so on. And aside from the general navigation, which is similar to like a normal survival horror game, you then also have to keep in mind that at any point of time, one of your teammates could turn out to be the Thing. So you actually have to check in on their emotional state, and if they get too freaked out or paranoid, they might attack you and that kind of thing. It's a really cool game, and it's interesting because I tried to look up some information about the studio, and from what I can tell, this was their first game, and then I don't think they actually made another one since, so it's an interesting piece of video gaming history there. The next game that I wanted to show you guys is a Switch game, and that is Platinum's Astral Chain. Now, this game passed me by when it came out in the early stages of the life of the Nintendo Switch. I think a lot of the Nintendo's first-party stuff probably distracted me from it, but I'm glad I came back to it. The game released to somewhat mixed reviews, but it is a game with some really high highs and some slightly annoying lows as well. But if you are somebody that loves Platinum's action games like your Bayonettas and Vanquishes and so on, the highs that this game accomplishes are really, really great. You know, visually the game is exciting to look at. The action is super duper fun. It has some detective modes that I think kind of bog the game down a little bit, and the game is, you know, probably a little bit longer than what it needs to be. But still, I think this is a really, really enjoyable game for the Switch, not to be overlooked. And to the best of my knowledge, I don't think it's come out on any other systems either. So that's really the only way to check it out. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this was a PS3 pickup. So I got myself a copy of Enslaved. I actually used to own this game back on the day on the Xbox 360, and don't know what I'd done with it. And fortunately, it's actually pretty cheap to come by. For those of you who don't know, Enslaved is a action-adventure game from the developers of Heavenly Sword. So, you know, the graphics are pretty decent, the storytelling capability is pretty good. It is written by Alex Garland, who was the guy that gave us stuff like The Beach and 28 Days Later, and the main character is inspired by the tale, I guess the Chinese mythological tale of Monkey, and is actually acted out by Andy Serkis. So there's actually quite a lot of Hollywood credentials behind this game. It flew under the radar somewhat, but I think it's actually a really, really fun game to come back and revisit. So that's Enslaved. The next game I wanted to show you guys was a couple of PS2 games. So got here The Incredible Hulk and Ultimate Spider-Man. I'll start with The Incredible Hulk. So this game, you know, the Hulk is like really, you know, purpose-built to be a fun video game experience, you know, to actually be able to play as a character that can just pick up and smash stuff. If you get that formula right, then, you know, you're onto a winning game there. And I think Sierra actually did a really good job with this game. It has nice, clean graphics, and the levels, it's 7 stages, but they're all open enough for you to do pretty much the thing that you want to do, which is smash a bunch of stuff. And it lets you do it in lots of ways, whether it's you know, physically jumping and raining down on the levels, or if it's doing stuff like picking up vehicles and throwing them at enemies. It gives you like a really cool suite of moves to go through the levels, and I think it actually It's quite a bit of fun as well if you actually are a fan of the Hulk, because it's every level you have opportunities to pick up these collectibles that has artwork from the original comics, different costumes and outfits for the characters. Really a fun game, complete package. If you in any way a Hulk fan, I would highly recommend this one. Ultimate Spider-Man. Now, one of the things I want to say about the Spider-Man games is that Spider-Man 2 was the benchmark for such a long time, and it was a terrific open world Spider-Man game on the PS2, and I think subsequently every game that came out afterwards was held against that benchmark, where we just wanted to get the most complete open world Spider-Man game that we could get. And so I think some of the other games that came out afterwards kind of got overlooked a little bit because it wasn't another Spider-Man 2. Well, now that we have Marvel's Spider-Man for the PS4 and PS5 and the Miles Morales games, which gives us that really high fidelity open world Manhattan Spider-Man games, I think it's fun to go back and revisit some of the games in the past that might have been overlooked somewhat, because you can just kind of play them and enjoy them and take them for their own merits. And I think that is the case with Ultimate Spider-Man. It's not the most complete package as far as being an open world game goes, but it has a terrific cel-shaded art style, and I think the game actually goes in some pretty interesting places. It lets you play as Venom for a period of time. The actual, the game does a really good job, I think, at embracing the spirit of the Stan Lee and Jack Kirby comics. And I think it's just a lot of fun to play. It looks great, has a really cool cast of villains. Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2. I think you should check it out. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this was another one that I think I'd overlooked back in the day. It's a PS3 game, and that is 50 Cent Blood on the Sand. Holy cow, this is a super duper fun game that I don't know how I overlooked it back in the day. Basically, you play as 50, and he finishes a concert, which he was expected to be paid $10 million. And when the promoter tries to stiff him of that money and instead give him a priceless jewel-encrusted skull, the skull itself is then stolen by somebody who takes it away to a unspecified country in the Middle East, which sets 50 off on his adventure. This is a super duper fun, entertaining third-person cover shooter. So if you remember that period of time where every game was like Gears of War, this game is like Gears of War, except it has 50 Cent, has his music just blaring throughout all of the levels, and the game is just crazy fun. I think there's lots of stuff, blows up real good. I think it doesn't take itself seriously whatsoever, and yeah, it's actually a game that I wish I'd played sooner, but I'm glad I finally got around to it. So 50 Cent, Blood on the Sand. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this was a game that I played on Game Pass last year, and it ended up being one of my favorite games of the year, and that is The Forgotten City. So this game has an interesting story behind it. It was developed by a guy in Melbourne who had a full-time day job as a lawyer, and he created the game originally as a Skyrim mod. But it was so good that he eventually left his day job and turned it into a full-fledged game in its own right. It is a very interesting concept. You are a person in modern day who travels back in time and discovers this city where everybody is sort of set in the Roman times, but the city is sort of isolated from anywhere else. And he quickly discovers, the main character, that the city is considered to be a paradise, but with a catch. And that catch is, if anybody commits a biblical sin, so whether that be killing somebody or committing adultery or anything like that, then the entire city and everybody in it is then wiped out on the spot. And that, in fact, happens. You can't necessarily prevent it from happening, but then what happens is you then go back into a loop, like Groundhog Day, to try and, I guess, solve the pieces of the puzzle to work out, why am I here? Why is this place set up this way? it is a really unusual and interesting concept, and the game, I guess, is somewhat of a mystery puzzle game at heart, but it even has small elements of combat in there. It is a really incredibly well-rounded game, considering it has largely been the endeavor and enterprise of a single person. So, Forgotten City, highly recommended. Just a really, really interesting game. The next one, this one I just picked up, I guess, as a bit of a bargain, Super Monkey Ball. Now, this game, I picked it up for the amazing price of $10. This was a remake of the first two GameCube Monkey Ball games, which, to my mind, are by far the best in the series. They made these two amazing games. The rest of the series, not that great. But I'm glad they actually brought it back. So there's versions on everything. You can get it on Xbox or Switch as well. I've got the PlayStation copy. But yeah, this game goes for super duper cheap now, and I think it still holds up really, really well. So if you remember those Monkey Ball games from back in the day, not only are the actual main courses terrific, but it has all of those fantastic extra modes as well, like the racing mode and Monkey Target. If you're an OG Monkey Ball fan from back in the day, you need to get yourself a copy of this game. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this was also another one that I picked up for cheap that I probably wasn't intending to, but for the price, and that is Dark Souls Trilogy. So this is the PS4 version. Now, I am not great at the FromSoft games, but I always respect and admire them from a distance. I have tried my hand with Bloodborne and also with Demon Souls and found them to be immensely challenging. I make some level of progress, but there's a certain point of time where, you know, the game just starts to kick my butt and I find myself getting frustrated. But I always want to jump back in because I know the people that love these games, you know, are super duper passionate about them, and it generally tends to be that if you like a FromSoft game and it clicks, then it ends up being one of your favorite games. So I always want to leave that door open. And to me, this trilogy here, it's actually a pretty good way to keep these games accessible because it is the feature complete version of all of these games. It has, so this is Dark Souls Remastered, and then for Dark Souls 2 and 3, all of these games, it has the complete soundtrack, has all of the DLC and everything like that. I managed to find it for $40, so I think that was a pretty good way to make sure that I'll always have a copy of these games on hand. The next game that I wanted to show you guys, this is another one that I picked up cheap, and that was Mad World for the Wii. Now, this game, this was a Platinum game from back in the day. I think it has one of the most cool visual styles. It obviously takes its inspiration very heavily from Sin City. Visually, it is just one of the most striking games on the Wii. You know, you come in and it sort of has like the energy and you know, vibes of a Platinum game, like in terms of the stylized violence and so on. I just wish it played a little bit better. It sort of tries to, you know, incorporate the motion controls in a way that I sort of find to be a little bit fiddly. It's still fun, and I'm glad I got it back in my collection, but yeah, it's a game that just, you know, the visuals are up here, gameplay around about here. The next game I wanted to show you guys is just a set of 3DS games. So, you know, Nintendo announced recently that the 3DS and Wii U eShops are going to be closing in March 2023. And so as a result, a lot of people have been going out and just finishing off their collections of both of those systems. And I've been very much the same. So, first of all, I wanted to show you guys Fantasy Life. So this is a level 5 RPG, a really cool, I think sort of a bit of an underrated gem on the system. So it's a role-playing game where it's all about just sort of switching character classes and not just like your traditional, you know, fantasy classes like a mage and a barbarian and so on, but you can actually change character classes to be like a chef or a fisherman or a blacksmith. It has really, you know, bright visuals that look really great on the system. It's one of the 3D mode enabled games. I'm only the first few hours into it, but really enjoying what I've played of it so far. My understanding is it's one of those games that if you have half a mind to play it, it's worth not only grabbing now, but also the DLC before the eShop goes down, because again, it actually adds quite a significant number of new character classes for you to play. Next game I picked up here, this one was a birthday gift, so thank you very much to my mates Matt, Anthony, and Mike. This is Mario & Luigi Paper Jam. Now there are 4 games in the Mario & Luigi series on the 3DS. Paper Jam is a really cool, universes collide storyline where the Mario and Luigi versions of those characters meet up with the Paper Mario World ones, and I think it is a really fun concept. Really enjoying the game. I think, most Mario and Luigi games, they play pretty similarly. They're all sort of light-hearted fun. This is very much more of the same. Very, very happy to have a copy of this one. I've been working my way through the Fire Emblem series on the 3DS as well. So Fire Emblem Echoes is one of the games that I have picked up. This is a remake of an earlier released Fire Emblem game in the series. And what I like about this particular game is that as the Fire Emblem series has become more and more popular in the West, I've found that with the games, they've started to add a lot more features that sort of broaden the scope of the game from just being a turn-based, tactical strategy RPG. So when I think about a game like Fire Emblem Three Houses for the Switch, which I'm pretty sure is the most popular game in the series, it has added a whole, section of the game where you are at a high school for magicians, and you are working on, like your social networks and relationships with characters and all this sort of stuff. And I feel like that's kind of getting away from what the purity of the earlier games is. And so for me, Fire Emblem Echoes was kind of a refreshing game to play, because it basically does go back to those, harkens back to those earlier games. Great characters. I like the storyline, and I'm glad I picked up a copy. I've still got, I think, one more Fire Emblem games, which is Conquest to get, and then I'll have the set for the 3DS. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this one is a game for the PSP, and that is Tactics Ogre. Now, this game is actually rumored to be getting a re-release on the Switch in November of this year, but I've been a fan of this game for a long time. It actually originally came out on the Super Nintendo. There is a PS1 version of the game, and I guess until the Switch version releases, this PSP version, I think, is sort of considered best in class of all the different versions. If you are somebody that likes turn-based, Japanese strategy games like your Final Fantasy Tactics, then I think you won't go wrong with Tactics Ogre. What I was surprised about with this PSP version of the game, I just picked it up thinking I was just, getting the UMD disc in a case, and that was it. But this game actually has a pretty decent looking color manual. You can see it's really hefty, and it's got a lot of really cool artwork within there, as well as some quite detailed strategy information about how to actually play the game itself. And it also comes with a mini soundtrack as well. So the game does have an excellent soundtrack, so it's kind of neat to have this. And you can see it actually comes with a mini CD as well. It just sort of harkens back to a time where I think a lot more care was taken with the actual production of physical copies of games. You'll know that if you bought a Switch game recently, it basically comes with nothing in it other than the actual cartridge. So, picking up Tactics Ogre and seeing that stuff was a real nice bonus. The next game I wanted to show you guys was Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions for the PS3. So the PS3 Spider-Man games have recently shot up in value and scarcity, and I think this is a reflection of, one, the market in general, but two, the recent Spider-Man games really reminding everybody how rad it is to actually play a good Spider-Man game. And so they've gone back to these old ones, and the PS3 games, they are effectively, sealed off from any sort of forwards compatibility. There's not really any other systems that currently play PS3 games. It's hard to emulate them. And even the ones that got PC releases, they've been delisted because Activision no longer has the license. Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, I think, is one of the best of these PS3 Spider-Man games, and it basically is a precursor to the Into the Spider-Verse movie, because it actually was, I guess, one at the forefront of the Spider-Man media that actually did that multiverse storyline. So with this game, you can play not only the traditional Peter Parker, but also Spider-Man 2099, the noir version of Spider-Man, as well as the Ultimate version as well. And this is one of those games where it's not open world, it's stage by stage, but it's really fun. I think the storyline is engaging and interesting, and to switch between the different Spider-Man characters and get the different art styles and play styles, make it a really fun game and a great recommendation. You got to be patient though to try and get it for a nice price. There are some people charging crazy money for this thing. I'm talking, north of $150, and I was able to get this copy. Obviously, it's not the original box art, but I was able to get this one for $50. I think you just have to be patient, sort of set your eBay notifications accordingly, and eventually you'll be able to get a copy of this game, hopefully for a reasonable price. The next game I wanted to show you guys, this is probably one of my games of the year, and that is Triangle Strategy for the Nintendo Switch. I didn't consciously do this, but I've got a lot of tactical JRPGs in this game's haul. Now, this game, when the demo came out a month prior to its release, I think people saw it and thought, okay, here's a game that looks like a modern version of Final Fantasy Tactics. But, I think that one of the things that people thought with the demo was, holy cow, there is a lot of dialogue in this game. And in fact, the ratio of dialogue to play was probably, 60-40 in favor of the dialogue. So I think that probably scared a lot of people away. And to be honest, I wasn't really sure if I wanted to jump in. I'm glad that I did, though, because this game is fantastic. There have been lots of Square games that have attempted high fantasy, whether it's Triangle Strategy, Tactics Ogre, games of that ilk. But I think because they always felt beholden to moving the player straight into the next combat sequence, the storytelling side of these games have always tended to be pretty thin. Like usually you'll play a main character who has, a direct line of communication with the king and queen of the land, and almost immediately you will be, told that you have to fight some kind of big bad that is threatening the world. But I think in this day and age, as people are more familiar I guess with fantasy stories that have, broader scope, whether that be The Witcher or, Game of Thrones or things like that, Triangle Strategy is probably the first video game I've played that actually, effectively delivers that type of scope, or at least certainly as far as the JRPGs go. So, this is a story about 3 different kingdoms that have a power struggle, but even within the kingdoms themselves, like the one that the main character Serenoa belongs to, there are 3 different houses that are loyal to the king, and there are sort of politics at play as to, which one is most at favor there. And the nature of the themes that are explored in the game, everything from, it's a game that explores subjects like refugees and slavery and the working class. It is a really ambitious game story-wise, and that to me makes it pay off with the fact that it actually spends a lot of time, almost as much story time on the story as it does with the actual combat sequences itself. So I'm about 2/3 of the way through. If it nails the ending, I think it's a good chance it'll be my game of the year. So if you're looking for a quality fantasy game, Triangle Strategy, I highly recommend it. The next game I got to show you guys, actually just a couple here really quick from earlier in the year for the Switch. So that was Pokemon Legends Arceus. I really enjoyed this as a open world Pokemon game where you can actually see the actual Pokemon that you're catching. It is a little bit thin in terms of the depth of the gameplay, but it almost feels like this game is going to be, a precursor to the ones coming out later this year, Scarlet and Violet, which I think mixes the more substantial RPG elements of a traditional mainline Pokemon game with the, the open world nature of this particular one. So it's not a bad game, but I sort of slightly hesitate to recommend it given that we're only a few months away from Pokemon Scarlet and Violet coming out. And then the other one I've got here is Nintendo Switch Sports, which again, a long-awaited successor to Wii Sports and Wii Sports Resort, and whatever that Wii U one was called. Nope, can't remember what it was called. Sports Club, I think. Anyway, This particular version, it's not too bad. It has some of your favorites on there, like the Tenpin Bowling and the tennis, as well as a couple of new modes like soccer. If I'm honest, it's not the best in the series. For me, that is Wii Sports Resort, the second one that came out on the Wii. But this one's still not too bad. I probably wish I just had, more free time to play it with friends and that sort of thing. But if you want a Wii Sports type game for the Switch, here it is. And the last thing I wanted to show you guys actually was another hardware release. So, up until I picked this up, I'd only ever owned one Sega system, and that was the Dreamcast. But now I have myself a Sega Mega Drive 2. So this is a nice clean copy of the hardware. I was always a Super Nintendo kid growing up, and of course, like everyone else, could only afford one system. So this one passed me by back in the day. But I'm actually quite keen to sit down and pick up a few games for the system. It's actually reasonably easy to collect for. I think all the main games they want to get, like the Sonic games and a lot of those Disney platformers, you can actually widely available and get for a reasonable price. The two games I started with, I went with Sonic 2 and FIFA 96. Now, with these two games, it made me realize I don't really know that much about the Sega Mega Drive. Like, I was a Nintendo guy, so, I was sort of familiar with the quirks of Nintendo systems because, I've seen, the Famicom, I've seen the Super Nintendo, I've seen the European version, which looks like a Famicom, and the cartridges are the same shape. I'm familiar with all of that stuff and get my head around it. I didn't realize it was a similar sort of thing with the Mega Drive. So when I picked it up at Eddie's Retro, the guy was like, hey, do you want the converter to put Master System games in there? And I had no idea that you could natively play Master System games on a Mega Drive. I even know what's called Mega Drive 2. Like, what's the difference between Mega Drive 1 and Mega Drive 2? I don't really know. And then once I started playing the games, that looks like pretty much what I think of when I think of a Mega Drive cartridge. And then when I got home and opened up FIFA, it looks like a completely different cartridge. So I thought this wouldn't play, and yet it actually slots into the system and plays fine as well. So it's been a real learning experience. I'm looking forward to jumping in and playing a bunch of games and seeing what I can get my hands on. But yeah, this is only the second ever Sega system I've owned. Having a lot of fun with it, and yeah, I guess keep an eye out in future videos. I may have some more Mega Drive pickups as well. Anyway, that's been me talking for a long period of time. If you've made it to the end, thank you very much for listening to me prattle on about my gaming pickups. Yeah, I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.